stuff in there. Shoot.
One of my favorite applications of paint is using oil paints that an artist might use on canvas. There's a wide selection of color you can choose from. It performs very well. It's very good quality. You can paint opaquely, you can paint with a glaze. There are many different ways you can use it. And at the end, you can use a varnish specifically designed for oil paints. And it gives you a beautiful sheen, and it has a great look, especially if you're trying to sell it in a gallery. It's got to have a certain characteristic of quality. For this particular video, I want to colorize this guy. This is a statue that I saw in Nuremberg, Germany, and it had such a beautiful location. It had pigeons on top of the head. It had a water spout coming out of the mouth, and I wanted to replicate that. And so when I paint this one, the first thing I've got to do is apply the gesso. I'm kind of anxious to see how this is going to turn out. Now after the gesso dries, go ahead and wipe it down with a abrasive pad or steel wool just to knock off the burrs and the grainy feel to the surface. You want a fairly smooth surface. Now you'll notice that when I rub the surface of the wood, removing the gesso bumps and wood grain feel, I'm also abrading some of the gesso completely off the wood. Only in the high places, but that's kind of what I'm looking for here because I want a little bit of irregularity underneath the tones. Well, I think I've got most of the first coloring on here. This is what I would call the toning of the canvas being the carving. I've got a little bit of indication of coloring in the cheeks. I don't want too much at this point, just enough to kind of give me a indication of what's going to happen there. Because later on I might change my mind and do something a little bit different. And if you look at this area here, let me do a little close-up on that. See all the abrasions that I've done underneath here? When I put the gesso on, I allowed that to dry, then I took the scrubbing brushes or the pads and some steel wool, and I actually abraded all that area. And if you look what's happening here, it almost has the appearance of marble. Was I looking for that? Could be. What I really love about working on these pieces is that when you start colorizing, you really don't ever really know what the end is going to look like. All right, I think I'm ready to go ahead and start painting. So what I want to do is start picking up some of the outlying foliage up here. So we've got green leaves. So I'll mix up some color. I need some liquid as a medium, which will give me a fast drying time. All right, so I'm using green for the leaves. I don't want a bright green, so I'm going to go with green, probably with an oxide addition. Some yellow oxide. That gives me a nice, rich, warm tone of green. I want to make sure that the colors that I put on here now don't get too dark because the glazing stain's going over the top of all this, and I want those to be subtle and not real prominent. I've gotten the skin tones fairly close to where I want it. I've got the tassel here, the coloration I'm looking for. I've got the grape leaves started up here, grapes, the purple grapes. Now this is essentially an antiquing coat. So what I've got here is a raw umber and some Prussian blue. So it's going to give me a very dark tone, which will highlight all the things that I've got up here, that I've mixed up here. So now what I've got is basically blacken the whole thing and hope for the best. This is always the uncertain part. Should I be doing this? But here it goes. You're not going to get any darker than this. You don't really want to use black because black is a dead color. But that's the fascinating part for me, is I'm enjoying the adventure of exploration, and very often I'm very surprised at the ending, how well it turns out. Of course, I've had some failures also, but for the most part, they've all come out pretty well. Okay, well, I think this is my last little, just when I thought I was done. Okay, let's see if I missed anything. I removed most of the glaze with a kitchen towel. Well, this is day number 3 on this piece. Originally a wood tone carving, hollow bottom to make it a little bit lighter. Now the first step, of course, that I did was put a coloration over the whole thing, just to kind of seal the wood, to give it a uniform look. Then I let that dry. I abraded it with some abrasive pads. I think it's been here for about 24 hours, and most of the finish I put on here is dry, not tacky anymore. And antique bronzes, especially the Etruscan stuff that I've worked on in the past, has this wonderful blue tone or powder, which is the oxidation in the cracks and crevices. So what I'm going to do now is go back into those areas and paint those, that kind of a bluish, powdery look into the corners. And once I do that, then I will have something that has essentially the look of an antique. All the imperfections that are there in the wood carving itself, you have little pit marks, you have little scratch marks. This actually looks very much like an antique bronze, which is what I'm shooting for. And the other thing that I'm seeing are variations of coloring. Now initially I had a very warm gray undertone. Then I went back and highlighted some of the cheek and the nose areas. Then I sealed that, and now I'm ready to do the final varnish on it. And I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will probably at that point go ahead and put my rotten stone in. Now rotten stone, R-O-T-T-E-N, very fine gray powder. Now rotten stone in this particular usage is only for the antiquing effect. Things I'm going to lightly dust it after it's been varnished one more time. And while the varnish is somewhat tacky, I'll go ahead and lay some of this dust in the crevices. And at the end of all that, we'll have something that has an antique quality to it, and on close examination, people will actually start to wonder if the piece is not surely an antique. And that's exactly what I'm looking for, is I want this to look antique. I want this to have a very ancient look to it. And I think I've gotten pretty close to what I envisioned. So if you've enjoyed watching this video, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and remember, keep your spirits high and your tools sharp. And we'll see you in the next video.